What's considered cutting-edge technology often comes and goes. For as many inventions that stick around for generations, there are plenty more that never quite find their footing. That's not to say that once popular inventions were useless, though. Some items, such as the sundial or the VHS, simply get outmoded by superior technology. So it goes. Some, however, like the following inventions from the early 1900s, may have been useful, but that doesn't mean they weren't both hilariously baffling and entirely ridiculous. It's hard to imagine that they ever were taken seriously even in their heyday. This stamp lubricator from the early 20th century made it much easier for people to send out letters, back when people didn't have the luxury of email, without having to lick the stamps themselves. Parenti's smoking machine allowed Victorians, who loved smoking so much that they would sniff the tobacco smoke like perfume, to pipe tobacco smoke throughout their homes. Talk about second-hand smoke, right? This gas mask pram was used during World War II at a time when Europeans were justifiably quite concerned about the threat of gas attacks. With strollers like these, parents could take their children on walks with just a little bit more peace of mind. Parents in the early 20th century were concerned that their children weren't getting as much sunlight and fresh air as they should. So, these baby cages were developed to quell those fears, and replace them with the new fear of babies falling out of buildings. Yikes. As if Parenti's smoking machine wasn't enough, the multi-pack cigarette holder made it possible to smoke several cigarettes at once for a real nicotine kick. Fortunately for our health, these devices have fallen out of fashion. If you're a big fan of bikes and paddle boats, the Cyclamer was around to let you cycle through the water with its hollow, buoyant wheels. It was first introduced in Paris in the 1930s, but since it wasn't particularly effective on land, or off, for that matter, it never gained much popularity. In what may have been a precursor of sorts to commercial headphones, the Man from Mars radio hat was invented by Victor T. Hoflich in 1949. It allowed users to literally wear a radio on their heads while looking fashionable, thanks to the power of valve radio technology. In England in the 1930s, two inventors created a device that was meant to save the lives of pedestrians. They would attach a roller and a shield to vehicles. If a pedestrian got hit, the driver could pull a lever that would pick up the pedestrian with the shovel, protecting the civilian until the car could stop completely. These cone masks were meant to protect wearers from weather elements, particularly snow. Besides looking rather ridiculous, though, it's hard to imagine that they weren't mocked even in their day, they also were a bit dangerous in crowded areas. The bed piano was invented in England in 1935 as a way for bedridden people to keep themselves occupied while severely sick. It seems more than a little bit unwieldy, but hey, these were the days before television and Netflix. After a wild night of drinking, have you ever thought to yourself, man, I really need to cure this hangover, but I also want to look like a supervillain? If so, the ice mask from the early 20th century is the invention for you. It actually wasn't known to be particularly effective, but the design was inspired. Most contemporary parents prefer to keep their children safe and protected by holding them to their chests, or, at least, close to the ground in a stroller. The baby sling from the early 1900s, though, takes that idea and makes it very unwieldy. Charles Steinlauf, the inventor of the Goofy bike, must have strongly believed in three things: that everyone loved riding on bicycles, that families would want to do everything together, and that young women loved sewing. As such, he created a vehicle that would allow all three activities at once. If this photo from Germany circa 1925 is any indication, not only did people once think it was a good idea to swim with flotation devices made out of old bike tires, but they actually thought they looked cool while doing it. Nothing's cuter than dimples, right? That's certainly what people thought in the 1930s, because that idea led to the development of the dimple maker. Medical officials, however, argued against the legitimacy and effectiveness of the device. As if getting the newspaper delivered straight to your front door wasn't enough, the fax newspaper was meant to print the morning paper in people's own homes as they slept. Unfortunately, it wasn't exactly worth the cost, because the process took several hours, so the invention never took off.